Hi, I'm Mark Clayton Coward, and today we're doing another segment of It's All About Baseball. Hi, we're featuring the great catcher Johnny Bench today, and I thought I'd start off with an amazing story about Johnny to show you just what a great leader he was. Uh, in spring training in 1968, it was pretty much established that they were going to try to go ahead, and even though he was only 20 years old, they were hoping that he could go ahead and have the starting catching position for Cincinnati. Cincinnati had a great pitcher at the time by the name of Jim Maloney, and they were playing in a game in spring training, and injuries had sort of slowed down his fastball. Well, Johnny was trying to get Jim to throw his breaking ball and some of his breaking stuff, and he shook him off several times. And finally, Johnny Bench called a timeout, and he went to the mound, and he told Jim, he said, your fastball is just not popping today, Jim. And Jim responded, said some nasty things to Johnny. And Johnny sort of went back behind home plate and he said, I'm going to show him. And this time, instead of calling for a breaking ball, he surprised Jim and called for a fastball. Well, to show Jim up, to show how much his fastball had slowed down, Jim goes ahead and throws the home plate. And all of a sudden, just like that, Johnny drops his glove completely off his hand and catches Jim's fastball barehanded and embarrassed him greatly. And after that, he was so embarrassed that he never went ahead and tried to go ahead and cross off Johnny after that. And that was amazing because Johnny wasn't even established as a starting catcher at the time. He had just played a month at the end of the 1967 season. And for that to happen is probably one of the few times that anybody's ever caught a ball in a spring training game or a major league game like that and deliberately did it without their glove on. And I was always a favorite story of mine of Johnny Bench's. And we're going to go on ahead, and at the end, we're going to have a nice little segment. We're going to show some of Johnny's great highlights of his career. Johnny himself was born in December 7th of 1947, a very, very important day in military history. And he played his entire Major League Baseball career with Cincinnati, which is very unusual. Played from 67 to 1983. And Johnny led the Reds team. They became known as the Big Red Machine, dominated the National League in mid-1970s with people like Johnny Bench, Tony Perez, the great Pete Rose, great Joe Morgan. And they won 6 division titles, 4 National League pennants, 2 World Series championships. He was a 14-time All-Star, 2-time National League Most Valuable Player. Johnny excelled on offense and defense. Twice he led the major leagues in home runs and 3 times in runs batted in. At the time of his retirement in 1983, he held the major league record for most home runs hit by a catcher. And he was also the first catcher to lead the league in home runs. He hit 45 home runs in 1970, which broke the all-time season record for both the American and National League. And he still holds the National League record for the most home runs hit in one season with 45. Since then, Salvador Perez hit 48, and then last year, the great Cal Raleigh hit 60, but Johnny still has the National League record for most home runs in a season with 45. And he hit 389 home runs, which at the time was the most home runs ever hit by a catcher. And he also batted in 1,376 runs, which were the most by any Cincinnati Red. He won 10 Gold Gloves in a row. He was known for skillfully handling the pitching staffs. He possessed a very strong, accurate throwing arm. He caught 100 or more games for 13 consecutive seasons, which is unheard of. In 1986, Johnny was inducted into the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame. He was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1989 in his first year of eligibility. He was named to Major League Baseball's all-time team in 1997, and he was named as the All-Century team in 1999. ESPN has called him the greatest catcher in baseball history. Now, Johnny, in his early life, he was born in Oklahoma. He was 1/8 Choctaw Indian. He played baseball and basketball, and he was also an excellent student. He was valedictorian of his Bigger Pony High School graduating class in Binghamton. He had a early tragedy. He was riding a school bus his senior year. His school bus was in a bad accident, and two of his teammates were actually killed in the accident. And Johnny was badly shaken up, as many other people were, but somehow he survived that. His father, he was such a great athlete that when he was playing baseball, his father was the first one to suggest that he become a catcher full time because he said that was going to be his fastest trip to the major leagues. And in 1965, Major League Baseball decided to hold a draft for the first time. Johnny was then a 17-year-old graduate from high school. The Cincinnati Reds selected Johnny in the second round with a 36th overall selection. In the 1965 season, he played rookie ball, and he played Class A ball for both the Tampa Tarpons and the Cincinnati Reds Ford Instructional League team. In 1966, he made the jump from Class A rookie ball all the way to AAA. He played the entire year with the Buffalo Bisons. In the 1967 season, interestingly enough, Jim Palmer, who had just won a World Series with the Orioles, had arm trouble and was sent down to the minor leagues. And when he was pitching for the Baltimore AAA team, Johnny went ahead and hit a grand slam off of him when he was playing for Buffalo. And that ended up, interestingly enough, being the last grand slam home run that Jim Palmer ever gave up. And Johnny was brought up to the Reds in August of 1967. At the end of August, he played 1 month in 67. He only hit 163, but he had such great defense and his throwing arm. Hall of Famer Ted Williams signed a baseball for him during one game and predicted that Johnny would be a Hall of Famer for sure. And then, interestingly enough, 22 years later, Johnny was elected to Cooperstown. And in 1968, he did end up going ahead and fulfilled their promise. They wanted to give him a chance to be a starter. In those days, it was very, very rare for any major league ball player to be a starter before they were 21 years old. The guys that did become starters already at that age were people like Mellott for the Giants, Al Kaline for the Tigers, actually ended up becoming the Hall of Famers. And that's how much trust they had in Johnny. He went on ahead and impressed so many people right away. His first full season, he came back, and not only was he playing still the great defense, but he won the National League Rookie of the Year award, batting .275 with 15 home runs and 82 RBIs. And this was the first time that the Rookie of the Year award had ever been won by a catcher in either league. He also won the first of many Gold Gloves. He ended up winning 10 Gold Gloves and awards in a row, and that was the first time in 1968 that a rookie from either league had won the Gold Glove award. And in 1968, he also had 102 assists. That was the first time in either league that anybody in either American League or National League had over 100 assists. It's 1945 was the last time that had been done. And Johnny was one of the few people at the time, and there was quite a few Reds. And Mickey Loich, for one, was from the Tigers, was doing military reserve work. Johnny was called a couple of times as a member of the United States Army Reserve, along with some of his teammates. Did his service at Fort Thomas in Kentucky, including this was Pete Rose, Bobby Tolan, and Darrell Cheney, and a couple other Reds. In the winter of 1970-71, Bob Hope asked Johnny to go on ahead and join him in the off season for a USO tour of Vietnam. And After the 1968 season, he had another great year in 69. In 1970, he had a first of what would be a couple of MVP seasons. He was the youngest player at that time to win the National League Most Valuable Player Award. He had 293. He led the majors, both leagues that year with 45 home runs, 148 RBIs, and the Reds won the National League division, swept the Pirates in the National League Championship Series, but then lost to the Baltimore Orioles in 5 games in the World Series. In 1972, he won the MVP award for a second time. He once again led the major leagues in home runs with 40 RBIs with 125, helped the Reds to win another West Division title. And this time they went on ahead and they swept the Pittsburgh Pirates in the 1972 National League playoffs, which would turn out to be, unfortunately, Roberto Clemente's last season with the Pirates. One of his most dramatic home runs he ever hit in the postseason was in the ninth inning, laid off opposite field home run in the fifth in the deciding game. The solo shot tied the game at 3. The Reds won later on that inning in a wild pitch 4-3. The Cincinnati Enquirer later called that game one of the best in franchise history. However, the Reds lost the World Series again, this time to the Oakland A's in 7 games. After the 72 season, Bench underwent surgery. They found a lesion on his lung, and they were afraid it would be cancerous. The lesion ended up being benign, but Bench stayed in an interview afterwards. He was never the same player after the surgery. He never again ever hit 40 home runs or more in a season. He said they cut the ribs, they cut the bones, they cut the nerves, and so I was never the same player afterwards. He was a very productive player after that, but he never hit 40 home runs after that. In 73, the Reds came from way behind, a 10.5 game deficit in early July, and Johnny hit 25 home runs and 104 RBIs, and he led the major leagues with 99 wins. They claimed another National League West, but that year, an amazing upset, it wasn't expected to happen. The Cincinnati Reds had 99 wins. The Mets won the National League East with an unimpressive 82-79 record, but they were running ahead, and they had the great 3 starting pitchers and Tom Seaver, Jerry Kuzma, and John Matlack. And that was a crazy playoff series where the series turned on a fight between Pete Rose and one of the Mets infielders turned the whole series around, and that Met team ended up winning that series. But then they would go ahead and lose the World Series to A's that year, and they lost the game 5, the deciding game 7-2. In 74, Johnny again led the league with 129 runs batted in, scored 108 runs, became only the 4th catcher in Major League history with 100 more runs scored in our 100 or more RBIs in the same season. But that year, that was the great year that Steve Garvey won the MVP for the Dodgers. And even though the Reds won 98 games, they lost the Dodgers and were finished in second place. In 1975, after a long wait for the Reds and their fans, they finally broke through in the postseason. Johnny had 28 home runs that year, 110 RBIs during the regular season. Cincinnati then swept the familiar opponent for them, the Pittsburgh Pirates, in 3 straight games and defeated the Boston Red Sox in the memorable 7-game World Series. That was the famous series where Carlton Fisk won one of the great wave-off home run in Game 6, but the Cincinnati came back and won Game 7. In 1976, Johnny had a very, very rough year. He had bad shoulder problems, and he only ended up with 16 home runs and 74 RBIs. But he had an excellent postseason. This time, the upstart Philadelphia Phillies were their opponents in the National League Championship Series. He was 4 for 12, and they swept the Phillies. And then they had a head-to-head matchup with the great Yankees all-star catcher Thurman Munson. And both catchers had amazing series for their teams, Munson had an amazing 529 batting average, and Johnny had 533 batting average with 2 home runs. But the Reds, even despite what Thurman Munson did, finally won the World Series, and they won in a 4-game sweep. And with Johnny, on the strength of his play in that series, both defensively and offensively, was one of the few catchers to ever be a series MVP. And at the post-World Series press conference, Sparky Anderson was asked to go on ahead and compare uh, Johnny with the great Yankee catcher Thurman Munson. And he said, and Anderson said, I don't want to embarrass any other catcher by comparing him to Johnny Bench. And Bench bounced back in 77 after a very, very lukewarm 1976 season. And he hit 31 home runs, 109 RBIs. But then the Dodgers won 2 straight pennants, both in 77 and 78. They lost to the Yankees and Reggie Jackson and the great Catfish Hunter in those teams. The Dodgers lost to them. And the Cincinnati Reds, only one more time in his postseason, went on ahead and went to the postseason in 1979. But they were swept by the We Are Family team, the Stargell Stars team of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And they would never go on ahead and make the postseason again. The last 3 seasons of his career, he went on ahead because he'd had so many injury problems, starting in 76 with his shoulder. In 1981, in 1982, and 1983, he only played 13 total games as catcher in those seasons. He was still a productive player. The Reds went on ahead and moved him to first base, and mostly the first couple of years, he mostly played first base. And then he went on ahead his last year, he was the starting third baseman. The Reds proclaimed September 17th of 1983 of Johnny Bench Night at Riverfront Stadium, and he hit his last 389th and final home run, a line drive to left in the 3rd inning before a record crowd. He retired at the end of the season at the age of 35 years old. For Johnny's career, he had 2,048 base hits, a 267 career batting average with 389 home runs, and 1,376 RBIs during his 17-year major league career, all spent with the Reds. He retired as the career home run leader for catchers, a record that stood until it was surpassed by Carlton Fisk, after Carlton Fisk went from the Boston Red Sox to the Chicago White Sox. And now the current holder is, of course, Mike Piazza, who played most of his career with the New York Mets. In his career, Johnny won 10 Gold Gloves, was named the National League All-Star Team 14 times, won 2 Most Valuable Player awards. He led the National League 3 times in caught stealing percentage, ended his career with an amazing 990 fielding percentage, a catcher, and an overall fielding percentage, including games at first and third base, of 987. He caught 118 shutouts during his career, which ranked him 12th all time among major league catchers as of 2010. Bench also won the Lou Gehrig Award in 1975 for his philanthropic efforts, the Babe Ruth Award for his postseason performance in 1976, and the Hutch Award in 1981. Bench popularized the hinge catcher's mitt, first introduced by Randy Hutley of the Chicago Cubs, that had become a starter just before Johnny did in 67. And he began using this mitt after he was on the disabled list in 1966 for a thumb injury on his throwing hand. The mitt allowed Bench to tuck his throwing arm safely to his side when receiving the pitch. By the turn of the decade, the hinge mitt became standard catcher's equipment, having huge hands. A famous photograph features him holding 7 baseballs in his right hand. Bench also tended to block breaking balls in the dirt by scooping them with one hand instead of the most common way, dropping to both knees and blocking the ball using the chest protector to keep the ball in front. Instead, he just actually going ahead and rotary grab the ball barehanded, which nobody was doing at the time. And many people took on this techniques after they found out how well they worked for Johnny. Johnny was given one of the great awards. He was elected to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 1989, alongside the great Carl Yastrzemski from the Red Sox. He was elected in his first year of eligibility. When he was elected, he appeared on 96% of the ballots, which at that time was the third highest percentage of all time. 3 years earlier, Bench was inducted into the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame, and the team retired his number 5. And you would have thought, as many athletes were on Wheaties boxes, that maybe they would have featured Babe Ruth or a past player. But in 1989, Johnny had the unusual award. He was the first ever baseball player to appear on a Wheaties box, and he thought that was crazy because when he was a child, Wheaties was his favorite cereal. And Johnny Bench here was the first person to have that award. After he turned 50, he went on ahead and he became a professional golfer, and he's one of the few ever baseball players. Michael Kenny for the Tigers was one to not only play Major League Baseball, but he also played either a regular PGA Tour or in this thing, he played Senior PGA Tour. And he had his home at the Mission Hills Gary Player Course in Rancho Mirage, California. In 1999, Bench ranked 16th on the Sporting News list of the 100 greatest baseball players of all time. He was the highest ranking catcher in that list. Bench was also elected to the Major League Baseball Hall Century team as a top voting receiving catcher. As part of the golden anniversary of the Rawlings Gold Glove Award, Bench was selected to the all-time Rawlings Gold Glove team. From 2000 until 2018, the Best College Baseball Catcher Award was given to Johnny Bench. It's named the Johnny Bench Award. Winners included future Major League Baseball players, the great player for Buster Posey for the Giants, also Kurt Suzuki, Kelly Chopag, and Mike Zunino. The award was renamed the Buster Posey Award from the 2019 season on. On September 17th of 2011, the Reds unveiled a statue of Johnny Bench at the entrance of the Reds Hall of Fame at the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati. The larger-than-life bronze statue by Tom Tsuchiya shows Bench in the act of throwing out a base runner. Bench called the unveiling of his statue his greatest moment. In 2016, Bench was inducted into the International Sports Hall of Fame. He was also a Hall of Fame recipient for the Bob Feller Act of Valor Award in 2018 for his service and continued to support the United States military. And Johnny, at this time, in 1986, after he was shortly retired, he started doing, with Don Drysdale of the Dodgers, backup contest for ABC's Sunday afternoon baseball. And of course, Al Michaels and Jim Palmer were the primary commentating crew. And Keith Jackson, usually working with Tim McCarver, did the number 2 Monday night games. And Bench would take a week off in June that year with Steve Busby filling in. Also worked one game with Michaels as the network switched to the announcing periods. While Drysdale worked the All-Star game in Houston as the interviewer, Bench did not resurface until the playoffs. Bench ultimately moved to CBS Radio to help the great Brent Musburger call that year's National League Championship Series. And Bench would later serve as a color commentator for CBS Radio's World Series coverage, along with Jack Buck and the late Vince Coy from 1989 to 1993. And he served as a field reporter for NBC Baseball Network coverage of the All-Star game in Pittsburgh. In 2001, Bench appeared on Sports Superstar edition of the game show. Bench co-hosted a Cincinnati radio show with Reds broadcaster Marty Brennaman, but quit in 2000 following Brennaman's Hall of Fame speech supporting Pete Rose's induction. Bench wrote several books during his playing career. He wrote From Behind the Plate, published in 1972. He wrote a book called Catching and Power Hitting in 75. And then he already wrote his Catch You Later, an autobiography, was published, co-author with William Brasher. In 1999, he wrote The Complete Idiot's Guide to Baseball. In 2008, he co-wrote Catch Every Ball, How to Handle Life's Pitches with Paul Daugherty. Bench acted several times, shows related to his baseball career. While he was still an active player, he made a cameo appearance on an episode of The Partridge Family, which first aired on January 26, 1973. And Bench was chosen by Major League Baseball to host a very unusual show, which was very unusual at the time. It was a show that was geared for kids called the Baseball Bunch. And every episode, there would be a segment where Johnny would go ahead and feature a baseball player, an active baseball player. One time they featured the great Chet Lemon had won winning Gold Gloves from center fielder. And Bench and other current retired ball players would teach a cast of the boys and girls from Tucson area about baseball. The San Diego Chicken would appear on every episode. And Bench later starred as a Joe Boy, Joe Hardy stage production of the musical Damn Yankees, which also included Marge Shaw, Jerry Springer, who was later a talk show host, and Marty Brennahan. In 2001, Bench appeared on Sports Superstars edition of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. In 2003, Bench co-starred on an episode of Yesteryears himself, along with the great Hall of Famers Ernie Banks and Frank Robinson. Bench was a Savannah Bananas coach in a 2022 game. And something that had been started a few years before that, but Johnny sort of popularized it. He's been a spokesman for many advertisements for several decades. In the 1980s, he was a spokesman for Krylon Paint, featuring the catchphrases, "I'm Johnny Bench, this is Johnny Bench, Bench's pitch. No runs, no drips, no errors." During his career, he also endorsed Fifth Third Bank and Gillette shaving products. Bench received a Stryker Corporation hip implant following his Major League Baseball career. He then went on ahead and became a spokesperson for that company nationally. He has also been a spokesperson for the pain relief company Blue Emu. In an interview during the 2008 Boston Red Sox game with knuckleballer Tim Wakefield on the mound for the Red Sox, Bench related a story that Reds manager Sparky Anderson told him that he was thinking of trading for knuckleballer Phil Niekro. Bench replied that Anderson had better trade for Niekro's catcher too. And Johnny was just such a great ball player. And I hope you really enjoy this film we're going to show you now of some of the highlights of Johnny Bench's career. And thanks for watching.
There's a high drive to deep right center. That one is going, and it is gone in the upper deck. A tremendous drive on a high outside pitch by Johnny Bench. I was just about to say that Blue doesn't give up many homers either.
Kurt, that's the kind of pitch you rarely see hit on the hard-throwing fastball pitcher like Vida Blue or a Koufax or any other hard thrower. A pitch high and almost in the eyes of Johnny Bench.
And a pitch to Bench. Change hit in the air to deep right field. Back goes Clemente. It's a pitch. He's done. Harris, a curveball's high to throw by Bench. And he's out at second base. Joe Morgan took the throw.
Campaneris, a pretty good jump. Johnny Bench, though, can throw out anybody if he throws a strike, and that's what he threw to Joe Morgan. And they nipped Campaneris at second. Bench this year threw out 60% of the men who tried to steal on him.
He had a good lead off first base, but that rifle arm, Johnny Bench, what more can you say, Al? You've seen it all year long.
Morgan going and takes it in foul ground. Here comes Odom, and he is out. The ball game is over.
Johnny Bench tests American League hurler Bill Singer in the fourth. Johnny Bench's home run gives the National League a two-run margin, 3-1.
Ball right here, Joe. Here it is. High fly ball, left field. Foster's got a shot. They're tagging up at third. Here comes the throw. It is in time. Doyle is out. Foster to Bench. A double play.
There's a high fly ball. It should be all over. Geronimo's under, and Cincinnati has won the World Championship, beating the Boston Red Sox 4-3.
Mickey Rivers with an outstanding stolen base percentage. He attempted 50 this season. He was successful 43 times. 860 the percentage. He's off. Bench throwing. They got him. Johnny Bench to Joe Morgan, and it was a no contest play at second base.
Oh, that's gone if it's fair. Hit the screen for a home run. Johnny Bench has just put the Reds out in front 3-1. And Figueroa got that ball where I thought was a good spot, up and in. And as Tony said, Bench's new style of aiming that bat at the pitcher, he timed it beautifully. Deep to left field. Roy White going way back, leaps and home run. It's a home run. They've signaled home run. Even though Roy White, the left field umpire, Lou DeMuro, has signaled a home run, so Johnny Bench has just hit his second home run of the night, a 3-run homer, and the Cincinnati Reds now lead 6-2.
Swung on and hit well to left field. Get out of here, baseball! It's gone! Oh my God! Can you believe it? Johnny Bench has tied